The views and opinions of Chris Simms do not reflect the opinions of this show or any of its other hosts. I learned to ignore
Chris a long time ago.
Yeah, no, you didn't. You asked me on your show every week.
That don't mean I ain't ignoring you. It's good TV.
Oh, yeah, baby. That's right. Chris Simms Unbuttoned. We're back. That was the beautiful voice of Matthew Berry, the fantasy football legend. He will be on this podcast a little later on, and we got some questions for him from the homies that we'll definitely dive into. He's awesome. He's a great new addition to our NBC sports team. And then that was Michael Smith you also heard. I mean, Michael Smith, Matthew Berry, they're going to be doing a lot of fantasy football work for NBC Sports this year. They're going to be an awesome combo. They really are. Two guys that love the game, have passion, and I had a lot of fun on their show earlier this week. So we got Matthew Berry coming on. That'll be cool. This podcast right here, all right, and what they're talking about is my Joe Burrow. I'd rather have him over Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, and they didn't like that. So we had a little fight on their show earlier this week. But today, little Ask Me Anything, focusing on the non-quarterbacks. That's right, those quarterbacks this week. We talk about them all the time. We're going to talk about some other guys around the league, and we're excited to do that. So it's me, solo dolo this week. No Ahmed Fareed. He's still holding out for a bigger contract. I don't know where that stands right now. He said, text me last night, he will be back next week. It's going to be a hold in. All right, so he'll be here giving like a B- effort until he gets that new contract. We'll see how that works out. He's just crazy money he wants. He really is. We're in a Roquan Smith type of situation here. All right, I don't know what happens. All right. And we got one question from Daniel Kunamato. So contract negotiations with Ahmed haven't gone well, I gather. No, not yet. Not so far. We'll see. He's a real diva, this guy. He's really holding our feet over the fire for more money, and we'll see. Also, I think he wants extra deodorant in the deal so he doesn't get sweaty pits. We've asked him to maybe brush his teeth twice a day instead of the one. We won't want as many multicolored pants. We want just the red ones that he wears at times. So there's a lot of things we got to iron out here before we have him back, but sounds like he'll be back in the fold on Monday. All right. Let's get after it. Monday was all quarterback talk. I had Big Phil on. Anybody wants to go back and listen to that, please do. Dad is as tuned in as anybody as far as watching these quarterbacks, watching the football, watching the league, and understanding that position. So we had some good conversations. But there was a lot of other subjects we didn't get to hit on, and I'm glad we're going to go down this way today. So let's start it off right off the bat. All right? Non-QB talk. First one, hey, news of the day today. Derwin James, news of the day, maybe yesterday, really, in the brand new contract. First question I got is from @the_armchair_GM3. Do you think the Chargers overpaid for Derwin James with his injury history? I was very, very intrigued, curious how they were going to work this whole thing out with Derwin James. It's one where I love the player. He's a superstar. There's no question when he's healthy that he is one of the best safeties in football, if not the best. And especially on a defense like Brandon Staley's where it's very multiple and they like to do a lot of different stuff, and he can fill a lot of those roles. I mean, he can, free safety, strong safety, linebacker, nickelback. I mean, he can cover tight ends one-on-one, the Darren Wallers of the world. Very special skill set. But I was interested to see how they were going to kind of organize this contract because of the right question there at Armchair GM3. The injury history is real. Last year played 15 games. That's great. But the 2 years before that, it was 5 out of 32 games. It was scary. And then even after this past season, which was a great season after the Pro Bowl, he got shoulder surgery. So, again, the more I've looked at it, and I haven't seen the full details, but this is what I would say. They got an awesome player. And ultimately, I do think they cover their ass with how the contract's orchestrated. It's a 4-year deal, $76 million in that range. But the big thing I always look at, and anybody that listens to the podcast and the homies know this, don't worry about the total years and total number. That doesn't mean crap. Look at what the guaranteed money was. And as of right now, what I've seen is it's $42 million guaranteed, which means to me it's a 2-year, $21 million deal. And then he'll have to stay healthy and earn those last 2 years. And I hope he does because, listen, he's got everything. That's why I don't think they're hesitant to pay him, not only because of the player, but the guy's a professional. He's obsessed with his craft. I've spent some time with Derwin James. He's the kind of guy you want leading your defense. He really is. He's the kind of guy you want, bring your daughter bringing home. He's got it all. So that's where I will vouch for him all the way. All right. Next question from @CraigChrist03. @CraigChrist03. Unless it's Christ, I don't know, but I'm going with Christ. That sounds better. Is safety the most important position on defense now? The Derwin contract makes it look like it is. Even if James' reported $19.1 million salary is accurate. Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. That's a note from Pete. I'm going too far. So, all right, it depends on the defensive scheme. It does depend on that. I do think of course it's very important, I think, when you look at safety play. And honestly, I've gone back and forth with this, through the years as far as, is it better to have better corners, better safeties? What's your take on that? And I would say right now, I would probably err on the safeties. I would. With the way the rules are, and corners, don't get me wrong, they're extremely valuable. But at the same time, with as good as the offenses are, and then how picky the referees are with calling penalties on the defensive backs, I think that's probably part of the reason you saw the Patriots get away from playing so much man-to-man last year, because it's just too hard with so many freak receivers, so many creative offensive coordinators. It doesn't matter if you got the best corner in football. They can find ways to screw that guy over in a one-on-one matchup, and it's just too hard to, hey, you're the best corner in football, but you got to cover a guy that's, running 4-3 and getting 4 picks as he's running across the field. That's where I go, no. And I think we're seeing more and more match zone type defenses throughout football. And then I think it's the versatility of the safety that I think is really the thing that the safety can play more than one position. And I think if you let's talk about some of the top defenses in football. You got a little bit of everything there. The Bills, 2 good safeties. The Carolina Panthers, certainly good safeties there. The 49ers have never been into corners. It's all about safeties for them. The Patriots, yes, they've had a little bit of both. We know that. So, listen, I'm not saying that we don't want corners, but I think if you made me choose one or the other right now, I would probably choose I'd rather have the safeties. I just think, again, I'm one that thinks you're crazy if you think you're going to play man-to-man all game long against some of these high-octane offenses in football. And then you just look at the Rams in the Super Bowl. They were that way. Hey, they pick and choose their times to play man-to-man, and then it's a lot of blitz zones and certain match zones that go along with that. So that's kind of where I stand on that. But that's a great question, and it's certainly one to be debated. I don't know if I'm necessarily right, but that's just what I think right off the bat. All right, next one. Let's go to the Chiefs. The Chiefs, watched that game thoroughly. First off, I love that Patrick Mahomes and company played the first drive of the game, and they get out there and just, go right down the field, march right down the field in the Bears. Mahomes looked awesome. Kelsey looked good. I don't think that offense will skip a beat. They did just sign Danny Shelton, and at Kenny with the Coke, at Kenny with the Coke, do you think Derek Nottie and Danny Shelton can play together, or do one of them end up backing up the other one? I do. I think this is more of a depth thing. That's where I kind of look at it. Or a specific game where they might be on the field together at the same time. Hey, you're playing the Tennessee Titans. You need some extra meat because it's going to be Derrick Henry and company, right? Well, okay, maybe we want to be big in those instances. But I would have a hard time thinking that still the starting 4 defensive linemen in Kansas City, we know it's Frank Clark. We know it's Chris Jones. I think you're going to have Nottie. Nottie is one of them. And then will the other defense end be Mike Dana or George Karlaftis, who was phenomenal in the game? But either way, I think that's how it is. And then, hey, Nottie, some of these big guys, you got to remember, they can't play 60, 65, 70 plays a game. So you got to have somebody in there to rotate them. And I think when you look at the Chiefs roster and look at it, I think that's probably one thing you can look at and go, yeah, they could use a little upgrade there. Kalen Saunders, big guy, 6 foot, 324. I know we got Taylor Stallworth, another guy, 6'2", 300 pounds, but not necessarily household names or guys that I think they're just going, well, they're awesome and they're set in stone to be, in the rotation. No, I think, Danny Shelton's that guy that can come in 2-gap. He's got a lot of experience with holding guys up and making that mosh pit in the middle of the defense in the run game. That's probably why they signed him. It makes a lot of sense to me. But yes, I don't think it's about starting both of them together. I think it's more of a depth thing and a certain game matchup. All right. Now, at Tobias Kober, we're going to talk about the rookies. And, of course, the rookies are the stars of the show here when you talk about, the preseason week 1, week 2. Those are the guys we want to evaluate. What do you think about the Chiefs' 2022 draft? They killed it again with Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, Sky Moore, Joshua Williams, and running back Isaiah Pacheco from Rutgers. They did. I mean, they killed it. Pacheco? Okay. I mean, I've been calling him that and been watching him at Rutgers the last few years, and I don't think I've said his name right once. So it's a learning process for me too. But yes, they did kill it. Hey, listen, I'm just telling you right now, I'm not sleeping on the Chiefs at all. I told Mike Florio and company today, like, if you're going to make me make my Final Four right now, the Chiefs are still going to be in it. I'm taking the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. I'm just going to let you know now. Now I just got to figure out if they're going to put them in the Super Bowl or not. But I don't think they're going anywhere. They made great free agent signings, great draft, and let's hit on these guys a little bit as far as what they are. First off, the two corners, Joshua Williams, Trent McDuffie. McDuffie is ready, go, start right now type of guy. I mean, that's how you evaluate him in the draft. You know, if there's one thing I didn't like, and I still maybe question to a degree when I watch him, and again, this isn't a huge concern, is his top end speed, you know, maybe is of the top corners in football. I'm not sure about that, but it's not so bad that I go, oh no, he's going to really have a hard time turning and running with the faster receivers in football. No, I'm just saying if I liked one thing to be a little bit better, it would be that. But incredible technique. That's the one thing. The way his ability at the line of scrimmage, you know, the movement skills as far as change of direction. I guess that's what I want to say. His technique is so perfect that way. His ability to stick the foot in the ground, break on the ball, you know, understanding, you know, how to get on top of a receiver and maybe make that just that little lack of speed I'm talking about a non-factor. He's really a guy that understands how to play. And I think that jumped out to me right away when I watched him, you know, in the game itself, is he understands coverages. This is a smart player. I knew that when he was coming out of Washington, but just a little bit, you know, the 4 or 5 series he played against the Bears last week, it jumps out. It really does. And I think he's going to have tremendous versatility and even in the ability to move into the slot as well. The other guy we got to talk about is the other corner. I was blown away by Joshua Williams. I was. Joshua Williams is one of those guys that freaky athlete. As I watched him, through the draft process, you know, tall, you know, can run straight away. I wasn't sure if his ability to, you know, change direction, flip the hips, stick his foot in the ground, break on the ball, all the things we talk about in that manner. I wasn't sure about it, but from what I saw in that first game, we don't have to worry about it. It's much better than I expected. And again, another guy that I just went, wow. I mean, this isn't just some raw freak athlete who's just getting it done that way. You know, there was, you know, like plenty of snaps of great job at the line of scrimmage, getting his hands on guys, jamming, turning and running. And then I think, like I just said, his ability to, you know, stop on a dime and break up the ball was really special. So, like, where I would go, Trent McDuffie, I loved everything about him. Wish there was a little more top-end speed. Joshua Williams is like the opposite. Top-end speed, all that. He's going to be the kind of guy that can, you know, match up with a Mike Williams out there or a Cortland Sutton. The bigger receivers that can fly, you're taking a top off the defense. Really like the way he looked. I think when you couple the Chiefs secondary and you talk about, okay, on one side McDuffie, the other side Josh Williams, and then L'Jarius Sneed in the nickel, or maybe they put him outside and make McDuffie inside, but I think they're going to leave L'Jarius Sneed inside at the nickel, and then Thornhill at safety and Reed at safety. I would be surprised. I think it's a more talented secondary than the Chiefs have had the last few years, so I'm kind of excited about that. George Karlaftis, like, wow. Well, all I can say is wow. You know, there was a lot of talk, you know, him coming out was, you know, is he long enough to be a legit pass rusher in the NFL? You know, is he explosive enough and all of that? Well, I think, you know, all questions were answered. I don't really care where it goes. He belongs, and I think he has a chance to be a starting defense end there right off the bat. First off, I alluded to this on Monday with my dad a little bit, but the power, his ability on the power rush and his ability to just get underneath the offensive tackle's pads is special. It is. So between that, he has unbelievable hands and then has side-to-side quickness where, yeah, okay, I wish maybe his first step was a hair more explosive. All right, but because of the threat of all those other things I just mentioned, it's going to add value to his ability to turn the corner and bend, because guys, as we saw in this game, there was a few times where he did get around the edge because they had been pushed back and he had overpowered them a few times to where now they're bracing for that, and then he gives the old hand move and dip and rip, and he's around the edge. So I love the way he looked, and if he's not starting, he's in the game a whole lot. But I think they killed it right there. And Sky Moore, I have no doubts about Sky Moore. I got to watch him a little bit more closely. I didn't study him all the way, but I like what the Chiefs have done. And the Chiefs are a team, they went to the AFC Championship game, and I think they got better in the offseason. So I'm excited about that. All right, next one. Roquan Smith here. We got a little talk there. At Bears Now info. We need to get an understanding on Roquan Smith. What is his value? I look at Roquan Smith as a guy where I'd go, he deserves to be in the class where I always say, next. He deserves to be in the conversation of top 2, top 3 highest paid linebackers in football. Not necessarily that he's the best, but as we see, when you're in that category, you get up there. First off, is he in the class of Foyesade Oluokun? I do. I think yes. He's every bit right there. C.J. Mosley at this point, $17 million, been injured, hasn't done a lot. Definitely, he's better than Deion Jones right now. So I'm not going to say he's in Shaquille Leonard or Fred Warner territory yet, but I don't think he's far off. And then where I also get into it and go, he was in. I think this defense that he was going to be in now with Matt Eberflus will fit him even more than the one he's been in the last few years, which has been 3-4 based and, maybe at times makes him play a little bit more of a physical brand of football, which he's extremely physical, and doesn't allow him just to run everywhere and shoot gaps and do all that like Fred Warner and Shaquille Leonard. So I don't really know what to think of this situation. And Roquan Smith, of course, does not have an agent. So that's the issue here, I think, when we all talk about it. And, Ryan Poles we made him a record-breaking offer. So I don't think he's bullshitting us there. So, I don't know where this goes. And there's, of course, the stories of Roquan Smith had somebody representing, calling around the league. It seems like it's kind of ugly, and I don't know what's going to happen or if that's going to get done. But I think that answers your questions at Bears Now info. He's in that top tier class of linebackers, no question about it. All right, it's buy or sell time. All right. It's time for Buy or Sell, presented by eBay Motors. What up, eBay Motors? Thank you for sponsoring this segment. We got a really good question here, and I think a hot button topic. Maybe going overlooked in the national media, certainly not going overlooked in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, or Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And here we go. Buy or sell. We should be worried about Devin Bush. All right, and we got a question here from Bronson Paradis. How worried should we be with Devin Bush? Miles Jack looks like the stud he is, but Bush, now 2 years removed from the ACL injury, still just looks like a different guy than his 2019 self. And, Bronson, I'm with you. I'm a little concerned. Again, I mean, he's going to be on the team. We know that, but it does not look like the Devin Bush we saw that rookie year before his knee went out. Definitely does not. Miles Jack is spot on. First off, I think that's one of the steals of the offseason, that they got Miles Jack. The fact that they got to replace Joe Schobert with Miles Jack is laughable. Miles Jack, I don't know what the deal was within Jacksonville. I know there's a slight knee issue maybe that people are concerned about, but for what they're paying him, wow. Miles Jack to me is still we brought up that linebacker graphic a little bit before. I think he's in that upper tier of linebackers for me. I think he is going to be a difference maker, and he is made for Pittsburgh Steelers football in the middle there. But Devin Bush, I'm worried about. Did not look comfortable the other night, did not make many plays, was not around the ball a whole lot. And I think, the writing's on the wall to a degree where pull up their roster. When you pull up their game day roster, it says Devin Bush or Robert Spillane. And Devin Bush has certainly lost a little bit of the explosiveness ever since the knee. And then because of that, doesn't seem to quite as physical or sticking his head in there quite the way he used to and being the ball hawk that I thought he would be or that he looked like in that rookie year. So I think it's certainly something to worry about here as we go on. Again, I think that Steelers defense is going to be jump back on the scene this year. And if Robert Spillane has to play, he's a good player. There's no doubt. He's a starting middle linebacker in football for my money and did a good job last year before he kind of got banged up as well. But I think the concern there is real as far in Pittsburgh with Devin Bush, and especially when we know they traded up a significant amount of picks to get him. We thought he was going to be the Ryan Shazier replacement, and it looked that way, and it certainly doesn't look that way now. So we'll see how that plays out. But I am happy about Myles Jack. Definite concern about Miles Bush. Or not Myles Jack, Devin Bush, excuse me. All right, so that was Buy or Sell, presented by eBay Motors. You might have the biggest garage, but with eBay Motors, you always have 122 million parts for your car right at your fingertips. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride, baby. Thank you, eBay Motors, for that. That was always a fun segment and a really good question by our homie Bronson Paradis. All right, Patriots secondary. Should the Patriots be worried about let me read this question before I pull up their roster, because I'm trying to do that at the same time as I'm talking here. All right, here we go. Should the Patriots worry about their secondary now that they lost 2 corners for the season in Malcolm Butler and Joe Jawan Williams, and lost J.C. Jackson in free agency? All right, so the first thing I want to say here is I'm not overly concerned about it. It's really one of the most – it's a position of incredible depth on their football team. You know, Malcolm Butler, I wasn't expecting him to be the difference maker for them regardless. So I'm not necessarily concerned with that. Losing J.C. Jackson's a big deal. There's no doubt. J.C. Jackson is certainly one of the 5 best corners in the game for my money. But Jalen Mills, hell of a player, okay? You look at him. And then you look at like other guys like Miles Bryant, Kyle Duggar, who certainly can add in coverage. All right, you get into the Joneses and Jack Jones. Jonathan Jones is one of the best nickelbacks in football. Jack Jones looked very good in preseason game number 1. Marcus Jones, I didn't get a real good look at him. In fact, I don't even think he played, and maybe I'm wrong about that, Pete. But Jabril Peppers, Adrian Phillips, right? They have a lot of depth and versatility in the secondary. And as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I don't think they're going to be the same defense that we saw the last few years as far as Stephon Gilmore, J.C. Jackson, man-to-man, shutdown, type of corners. I think we're seeing a transition here in New England where they're playing more zone. They'll have their moments where they pick man-to-man coverage, but I think they came to the realization of what I was talking about when we were asked about the safety corner thing. It's just too hard. I don't care who you are. There's too many good receivers. There's too many creative offenses to think that you can just play man-to-man that much, and I think they're making that adjustment there. So I'm not necessarily concerned with it. I think there's a lot of depth. There's still a lot of talent there, and they're really one of the teams that I would say, like, hey, we talk about Pittsburgh and their ability to evaluate receivers and, teams that have that eye. The Patriots are the masters of secondary coaching. That's where Bill Belichick made his name. And he'll have that group ready to go, certainly. And I think they're going to have a better front than we've seen in years past, too, to where they're not going to have as much pressure on them in the secondary to just hold down the fort man-to-man all the time. All right, hopefully that answered the question. Let's get into this a little bit. Tyquan Thornton, all right, and Christian Wilkerson. Wilkerson reportedly got the concussion yesterday, which was the precipice of the fight between the Panthers and the Patriots. But 2 guys that I just want to talk about because, man, did they pop. They really did. They were guys that I know that have gotten a lot of buzz during training camp. But when I turned on the film, the one thing, the Patriots hit here. They hit. Tyquan Thornton, he's going to be able to run by anybody. He showed the ability to release and get off the line of scrimmage, and the speed is real. And I think that goes for Christian Wilkerson as well, and I hope he gets healthy here soon. I don't think we're going to see him in the game against the Panthers on Friday night, but either way, I think there's a little bit of everything in this Patriots offense. The one thing they miss is maybe that explosive guy that can scare a defense, open the field up for the Jacoby Myers and the damn receiver from the Eagles. Hold on, I'm blanking out on names. See, this is where I need Nelson Aguilar and the tight end play. But now you got a guy like Tyquan Thornton, Christian Wilkerson. They're going to be able to really stress a defense out. And I think there's got to be an emphasis on, pushing the ball down the field a little bit. So between them, and then let's not forget about Devontae Parker, who I expect to have a huge role on this football team. And I think that's why we've kind of heard like Kendrick Bourne hasn't got a lot of run or touches in training camp to this point, because Devontae Parker's a superstar receiver if he's healthy. He's a difference maker. But I'm excited about the way they looked. And for the Patriots' draft struggles with wide receivers, I think that'll quiet this group up, quiet the haters of the world in that department. The other guy we got to show a little love to here is Cole Strange. Another guy, a lot of, talk. They drafted him too early. I can't believe he came off the board there. Anybody that listened to me during that time, he was the next guy in line. There was a run on offensive lineman. That was the next best guy. And I'm sure they had their eye on him all along. And let me just say, guy looks real to me. I'm just going to say right off the bat. In fact, when I watched him, what I really thought, the biggest thing was I said, am I watching Joe Thuney again? I mean, he looks like Joe Thuney. And incredible athlete, great in the run game, pulling guard, screens, plenty athletic to get out in front there and adjust on the run to make blocks. So that was really special. And then he looks like he's, can see the game, understands, oh, here comes a stunt, let me get ready for it, all of that. If there's one thing I'll question and just say, does he have enough ass and anchor in his pass pro? That'll be something I look at. And that was a little bit of an issue with Joe Thuney early in his career. Kind of that undersized guard, but that's, extremely athletic and aggressive, has great technique and all of that. But man, I like the way he looked, and they got their starting guard for years to come here. Good little talk there about the Patriots. All right, so now there's been a lot of training camp fights, and we know there's the let's scrimmage against the other team. There's a lot of benefits to that, as far as getting some fresh bodies, not going against the guy you've seen every day, getting a new scheme to go against. But at the same time, is there ever not a fight between teams when they get together in these scenarios? I mean, to the point where I got to think that maybe they're gonna rethink how they do this as far as some of these teams. I don't know. Again, I know these coaches go, well, I only want to practice against a coach that I trust, and I know his guys will act the appropriate way. Well, yeah, okay, but that's hard. It's an emotional game, and tempers run high. It's guys trying to earn spots and all that. So that's where it's become a little bit dangerous. And we got a question here about training camp fights from @RaulDelToro15. Best training camp fight you ever saw? Did you ever get into a training camp scuffle or two? All right, so let's just answer that second part first. No, I did not get in a scuffle at all. Did I talk some shit a few times, and was I yelling at the Buccaneers defense when they were talking to me, and did Gruden have to tell me to shut up and listen to the play and get in the huddle? Yes, I mean, I certainly had that, and we even got into some arguments with Derek Brooks and company at times because, they'd say something, and it's week 3 of training camp, and you're hot as hell, and, you're losing calories by the minute. So, yeah, I had a few temper tantrums that way, but I want to get my guys here right. The best fight I ever saw, all right, is going to be it is Dave Stewart, Tennessee Titans. This is my 2008 when I went to the Tennessee Titans football team. It was 2008. Dave Stewart, right tackle. We called him Big Country, okay? And he was a tough, no-nonsense, just absolute, killer at right tackle, just the kind of attitude you want. And then we had a guy, Tony Brown, number 97 on the Tennessee Titans. Awesome dude. Loved playing with both of them. Country was, the big crazy guy you weren't worried about, or you didn't really want to mess with in the locker room or anything that way. And then, Brown was kind of a guy that was awesome guy, good player, always having fun in the locker room. But it was the Tennessee Titans and Jeff Fisher, and it was physical practices. And they got into a fight one day, and I mean, it got nasty. It got nasty and got to the point where, fists were up, and there was Tony Brown's helmet got ripped off by Dave Stewart, and Dave Stewart started swinging the helmet at Tony Brown's head. A la Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph. But that is one that will always stick out in my mind. Thank God he didn't connect and just break Tony's head, but that was real. And as Dave Stewart, the no-nonsense guy he was, it just kind of like, he's crazy, and that's too crazy even for football standards. But the fight got broken up, and Tony Brown being as good as he was, right, where just a great guy, the fight got over, tempers kind of subsided, but there was still some yelling, and he kind of things got quiet, and he was just like, I mean, nobody's going to say anything? Nobody's going to say anything that this guy just tried to hit me in the head with his my helmet and just swinging his helmet like it's a weapon? And, the team actually started to laugh. And, I know, that was absolutely – you're right. It's crazy. But I got to say that was probably the best fight I was ever a part of. And that was a team that had a lot of big physical dudes, and fighting wasn't that unusual in our football team. Even as we got into the regular season, sometimes there was a few there. All right, 49er rookies. All right, at Thomas Gatz TV, shout-outs to Drake Jackson and Spencer Burford. Can't speak to Spencer yet. I didn't quite get there. And, again, I'm trying to watch as many guys as I can as possible. But Drake Jackson – he's a guy that, like we just talked about with George Karlaftis, I would imagine or have a hard time thinking he won't be a starting defense end. If not, he's going to be out there a lot. Samuel Ekubam is the starting defense end right now, but Drake Jackson is just a physical freak that has the body and the pass rushing skills that I just think fit that defense in San Francisco. They a little bit of that Seattle scheme-ish. They don't do that quite as much as they used to, but it's still kind of their base core there. And defense ends get to rush wide, and he's just there's really nothing about his skill set not to like. Maybe a hair stiff, but as far as strength, speed, explosive ability, and when you tell that type of guy, like, hey, just get to that 7 yards behind the ball every play and make life simple for him, I would have a hard time thinking he doesn't make a real impression and do some real special things for that 49er team this year. So he deserves a shout-out. You're right about that, Thomas Gatson. I'll get on Spencer a little bit more, and we'll answer some of that maybe next week. All right, Jets rookies. At Evan2160, how did the Jets rookie class look to you? Garrett Wilson had a few catches. Jeremy Ruckert had a TV. Michael Clemens, a half dozen pressures. Love the pod. All right, so let's get into the Jet rookies, all right? And, first off, Garrett Wilson, he does look the part. There's no question. I did question with, Garrett Wilson to a degree of just where, early in the game he was out there, and then he disappeared for a little bit. And again, the physical ability is there. There's no doubt about that. I know I was a little lower on him than maybe most coming out in the draft. But certainly has speed, can stick his foot in the ground. I still want to see how he kind of plays through contact, but he can run routes and do everything you need, certainly. But the one thing I noticed is got to be a little more urgency in his routes. And again, I don't know this, but I would think he wasn't in for a little while because I believe it was the first two routes. There was one where actually Zach Wilson went to him. Maybe it was the first drive of the game. It was a little 6-yard out route. It just took too long. He was 5 yards down the field still shaking people and doing this, and it's like, hey, we don't got all day. This was a 3-step drop. We got to throw the ball here. So I got to think there was that talk to him, like, hey, we can't set up the DB all day long here. You got to attack him, make a move, put your foot in the ground, break out. But certainly looks like he belongs. I certainly don't sit there and go, oh no, I'm concerned. I think there's a little bit of everything there to be happy about. All right, so that I liked a lot. Breece Hall, I liked what I saw from Breece Hall. I will say that too. When you look at Breece Hall and what he did there, I wish Breece Hall was a hair quicker, but I think the straightaway speed is undeniable, and there's a strength factor to him too. I think they got a nice little combination there with him and Michael Carter, because Michael Carter got a tremendous quickness and can make people miss. But now you get a Breece Hall who's the kind of guy, and we saw a glimpse of this in the game, where gets up in the line of scrimmage, nothing really there, but go afterburners, and he can turn the corner with great straight-ahead speed. I think he'll be a real factor for this football team, and I think he's going to be a factor just because of the way this is a Shanahan run scheme. I think the offensive line there with the New York Jets is going to be a lot better. So I think that was really encouraging to see. Ruckert looked good, but the Jets have some good tight ends, and I don't get the sense that he's going to be in the starting lineup anytime soon. He was kind of the fourth tight end in the football game. So we'll see where that goes. But tight end is one of the hardest positions in football to adjust to from college to the NFL. Again, college is so simple right now. There's one run game, two run plays in our offense, and split out wide and be a receiver and run a route is what he was asked to do a lot of the times. He can be a great blocker. He showed that for sure. But I'm sure there's an adjustment period as far as just at the line of scrimmage, the calls, all of that type of stuff. So we'll see where that goes as far as Ruckert. But, it's only a matter of time before he gets in there and shows what he has. All right, next question here. We got a little Eagles. So let's stay on that game, Jets-Eagles, because there's a lot to talk about. David Saba, would love a breakdown of the new Eagles defense with Jordan Davis in the middle and Nakobe Dean and Kazir White as the stacked backs. Looks like heavy 5'2", and it's going to be a problem. Well, they're going to be able to get heavy and physical and be a pain in the butt with all their size. Jordan Davis is the real deal. So that would be the first thing I would say. I mean, he's special. I think the only thing we got to worry about with Jordan Davis is, getting him in shape so he can play 55 snaps a game. And not that he's not in shape, but it's a different type of intensity in the NFL, and the game is more hectic, and of course you just can't dominate quite the way you did in college. And that would be the only thing I saw in the game where I went, you could see he died out a little bit as it went on. So, but that'll come, and they have enough depth there to where they're going to be able to keep bodies fresh between Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave and some of the other big guys they got in the middle. Now, the middle linebackers, Nakobe Dean got in there with the second team. I'm not going to say I'm blown away by Nakobe Dean. He's this. Everybody has this love affair with him, and I know he made a lot of tackles, right? But there's things that I'm not sold on yet, and I don't mean to be a hater, and he's going to be around for a while. But I know everybody thought he was a first-round talent, and just the way he looked on the field. First off, his speed is not all that special, and he plays small. So that would be the only thing I'm concerned about, and I don't expect him to hit crack the starting lineup when we start the season. And then again, I don't want to overjudge. It's just one game, but anybody that listens to the pod, they know how I am here, where I just go by look for right now. And I know he had a few tackles, but not necessarily the tackles I look at to go, oh, whoa, that was awesome right there. So it was a little bit more of, hey, it just kind of fell in his lap at times, and he's the middle linebacker in a place where, yeah, you're going to get tackles. It's almost hard not to at times when you're playing that position, especially around some of those big guys they got in front of him. All right, so that would be my thoughts there. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything else on the that side of the ball. But, Davis is he's immovable. You cannot move the guy, and he is NFL ready. And he's going to have 3-down value as this goes on. Of course, he's going to be able to stop the run. But I think like a Vita Vea, the more he gets in shape, the more they're going to realize, oh, my gosh, he has tremendous pass rush value because he's going to push people back into the quarterback's face and make it very hard for the quarterback to see or step into throws. And I think that's something to look out for there. Let's see. I just want to make sure. I want to hit just a little bit on the Jets, too, on some of the other rookies. Sauce Gardner looked very good. The first big completion you saw, from Jalen Hurts, scramble to the right, threw a ball to the right sideline. Guy went out of bounds there. Oh, that was Sauce Gardner's fault. He's got to get it's 3 zone. It's 3 deep zone. You were supposed to be back there. Don't take the cheese of the underneath coverage. He did that, but looks long, certainly has great feet, and the speed's real too. And he's perfect for that scheme. So I envision him being a Richard Sherman type of presence for that defense. One thing I will say, and I just saw it a little, and he didn't get called for it, but he can be grabby. And that's something to watch out for, as the year goes on. But I definitely liked his look. And then I also want to hit on Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson actually looked more powerful than I expected. The power was more than I expected. The get-off and speed was a hair less than I expected, if I was going to be totally fair. But he's made for this defense. And another guy that I don't know if he starts, because there's some decent pass rushers here with the Jets football team. But I think overall, he's going to be in the rotation, and they're a team that wants to keep fresh pass rushers out there. And here we're talking about the wide 9, again, the Seattle scheme, all of that. I do think he's made for it. And you got to take into account, too, so with some of these young guys, and maybe this holds true with Nakobe Dean as well, they're thinking a lot. They're worn out from training camp. It's stressful. You're learning. You're working hard. You're playing a talent of players that you've never played this many good guys on a day-to-day basis. So maybe they don't have quite their explosiveness that they will have week 1 of the NFL season, when it's not 2-a-days anymore and you get a little time to rest up and get your legs underneath you. All right. The G-Men. Let's go to the other team in New York, right? We got a question about @TJ O'Donnell. Give your honest opinion on Kenny Golladay. Is he running lazy routes? Do you think he got paid and stopped trying? Or do you think it's a practice video and it's being overblown? And we'll find out who the real KG is in a month. All right, so yes, there's a little bit of a video out there between Wan'Dale Robinson, Kenny Golladay running routes, and I know it's kind of taken the internet by storm here, and people think Golladay doesn't look all that crisp or good. Let's not read too deep into this stuff. Okay, first off, Golladay, he's a seasoned veteran and probably resting a little bit. I don't want to say resting, but saving himself. He has had lower body injuries, and then you got a rookie who's, trying to prove himself and show everybody I was worth the 2nd-round pick. And again, this is Wan'Dale Robinson's cup of tea right here. I mean, he's a slot receiver. So him, taking off the line of scrimmage, making sharp cuts, that's what he's there to do. He did look good running routes, better than I expected, honestly, in the game against the Patriots. Kenny Golladay, this is not his game. Hey, listen, I'm with everybody else. I'd like to see a little bit more effort here, but I don't know about his health status. Maybe he is protecting his knee or whatever lower body injury he has. And let's not overthink it too much. Let's see what he has on the field. Golladay, big. He is a good route runner. And the biggest thing is he's got tremendous 50-50 ball skills down the field to bring in those type of passes. And I think that's where, he's one of those guys, even when he's covered, throw him a back shoulder, throw it up, he can go get it. That's his cup of tea. And then Wan'Dale Robinson, you see, he'll be working in the middle of the field. So I'm not overly concerned about it. All right. @Ranger1135, by all accounts, Evan Neal has really struggled with his pass blocking. If I remember, you're right. You had him as the best pass blocking tackle that you ever evaluated. Are his struggles a surprise so far? I watched the game. He let up a sack, right? It was a play action. He blocked down. I'm not concerned about it at all. Again, I believe one other time, Josh Uche, who looked really good for the Patriots, got around the edge and gave him some issues. It's an adjustment period. Again, these are guys that they're not used to the NFL yet. Even in the SEC, you're having a lot of weeks where you're not playing an NFL defensive end. And certainly not, some of the caliber defensive ends, your first game, the New England Patriots, all of that. To me, there was one thing that he needs to continue. You just got to continue to play throughout the whistle. At the times there was just the leaning, like on the sack he gives up. He drove off the ball. He made good contact. And then he was like, well, wait, I moved him, and that should be good. No, that's not good in the NFL. You got to continue to play, move your feet, and stay aggressive that way. But I thought, all in all, I like his look. And I think the more and more he gets used to life in the NFL, and let's not forget he's playing right tackle right now, and he was left tackle, there's a little bit of an adjustment period there altogether. But tremendous athlete for his size. You know, he gets out in a screen. He looked great running and adjusting again, you know, change of direction blocks with people in space. And I think, you know, versus the pass, there was when he let people get into him is when he had a little of the issue, and then maybe he just relies on his size and leans on people. But when he strikes first, and what I mean by that is, you know, taking the pass set and boom, and gets those hands on it, which he did a handful of times in the game, it was over. So don't read too deep into it. Let's reevaluate week 2. We'll see what he has. I think you'll see a tremendous, you know, I would be shocked if you don't see a tremendous jump now, knowing what to expect, what the NFL life is like. The nerves are out, getting used to right tackle, all of those things. And, hey, it's not easy. They started him. You know, Ike Ekwonu didn't start. He got to go in as a backup left tackle. And, of course, he's played left tackle. So there's that, too. But I'm not concerned with the way he looked. Kayvon Thibodeaux, got to talk about him, all right? One thing I like about Kayvon Thibodeaux is plays really freaking hard, all right, and has good hands and the ability to shed people and get off blocks. I love that. But out of all the pass rushers in the first round, to me, he's the least impressive rushing the passer. There's not a great power move. The first step, I think, is the least of everybody in the first round, whether it's Trayvon Walker, Aidan Hutchinson, George Karlaftis, and Jermaine Johnson. So, you know, again, I'm not sure, and I think anybody that listens to me now, they know that if I'm wrong, I say I'm wrong, and I go, oh, whoa, that, you know, like I said on Monday, I didn't like the way Matt Corral looked. No, I didn't. I wasn't real high on Kenny Pickett. He looked awesome. I got to keep it real. I don't give a shit what my rankings were in the draft. So, yeah, I'm a little worried about Kayvon Thibodeaux. I am. And, you know, I hear sometimes, hey, you know, he's around the quarterback a lot in training camp. Well, you know, we got, you know, an offensive line that's learning a new system, learning rules, and then, you know, Wink Martindale, they're blitzing the shit out of the offense too, to where he's getting the advantage of, oh, wait, we're trying to pick up this blitz, and, oh, wait, there's Kayvon Thibodeaux. I just want to look mano-y-mano, and mano-y-mano, he never really threatened the right tackle for the Patriots all game long. And that concerns me, and again, I hope I'm wrong there. All right, we got breaking news. Deshaun Watson's settlement has been reached. All right, and here we go. Deshaun Watson will be suspended for 11 games, and will receive a $5 million fine. First game back will be Week 13 at Houston. It's unbelievable that it's going that way. Really unbelievable that it's going that way. But, you know, extremely interesting there. And, you know, through the grapevine, you know, I thought there was going to be, I thought maybe it would be a 17-game suspension, but then when you didn't hear, you know, Peter Harvey have an immediate ruling and wanted the NFL to figure this out, I went, oh, okay, well, it's obviously not going to be a full year or 17 games. Maybe it's going to be somewhere in between that 8 and 12 million. And here's the other thing that was brought to my attention by Mike Florio a little bit. The fact that I think there were some owners behind the scene that didn't want the full suspension, right? The full year where it kicks back the contract another year, right? To where if he got suspended for this full season, the contract and the $46 million a year wouldn't start till the 2023 season. That's not the case now. So for the Browns and the money department, this actually is a bad thing for them. And, of course, he's going to lose a lot of money, not only from the $5 million fine, but he's going to lose a lot of that $46 million this year too. or no, he won't because he got the signing bonus this year. But either way, it starts the contract. So he's not going to lose a ton of money this year. But either way, it starts the contract. And I think, Mike Florio brought up a great point about that. So that's interesting. Either way, we know Jacoby Brissett's going to be starting. But finally, we have some finality to that conversation. Here's the Cleveland Browns schedule. And, Cleveland's got a really good football team. And even with Jacoby Brissett, the favorable schedule at Panthers, Jets, Steelers, at Falcons, I can see them beating the Panthers. I can see them beating the Jets. I can see them beating the Falcons. Steelers might be finding their footing. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we were sitting here with Jacoby Brissett going, "Oh, the Browns are 3-1." He's played a little. He's got a pretty strong arm. He can throw the ball down the field, and we know they're gonna play through the running game anyways. And their defense is talented. So we'll see where this goes. But finally, we got some news there on Deshaun Watson, and we can put that to rest because I am a little sick of talking about that. I do want to hit on Aidan Hutchinson just real quick because he was phenomenal in the football game. I mean, if Aidan Hutchinson isn't – he's TJ Wattish. I mean, again, Trayvon Walker might be the freakier athlete in Jacksonville. And I really like the way he looks too. And he might have more natural God-given abilities and maybe better bend around the edge. And I think he is going to be a force. Not sure he's the natural, instinctive player that Aidan Hutchinson is, though. As you see, Aidan Hutchinson has tremendous quicks and has a feel and a knack to just go find the ball and make a play. So I like the way both look. But, man, Aidan Hutchinson, to me, when I was watching, I was just going, am I watching T.J. Watt here or am I watching Aidan Hutchinson? That's who he really reminded me the more and more I watched. Just the quick twitch, all of that, maybe not quite the first step, but he's a bigger human being than T.J. Watt, too, a little bit longer, and I think he actually has more quickness. And like we said coming out in the draft, I think he has a real thing of quicks to power. We've heard of speed to power, but quicks to power, his ability to threaten the tackle and make him go, oh, is he going inside, outside? And then he puts his right arm underneath that guy's chin and pushes him back into the quarterback. That's where, he can be really special that way. All right. That's that. And now it's time for the legend of Matthew Berry. Well, looky who we have here. If it isn't old Mr. Expert of the fantasy world, Matthew Berry. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm good, Chris. How are you? I have a question for you.
Oh, good, good. I like it. Come out with fire.
I'm making my debut appearance on the SIMMS Unbuttoned podcast.
Right.
Okay?
Yes, right.
And I was looking at you last night. I noticed now you and I have been on air a few times.
You were looking at me last night,
I was.
online. You were checking me out.
I was checking you out top to bottom. And I noticed this when we met at the Hall of Fame game out in Canton, Ohio, and we did our hit there on Football Night in America. I noticed this yesterday as well. I've been in meetings with you as well. You always button the top button. It's kind of your look. It's your thing.
It is my thing.
And so I was thinking, because they told me yesterday, like, oh, you're doing Unbuttoned tomorrow. And I said, oh, that must be the thing. That must have been when they were coming up with the name. They're like, oh, Chris has always got every buttoned when he's on air, except when he does the podcast. Then he probably gets crazy and unbuttons one of the buttons. But now I'm looking at you now, and you're still buttoned.
Right.
Shouldn't this be the Chris Simms Buttoned podcast? Where does the unbuttoned come from?
Well,
because you are buttoned up to the top.
I am, and I always will be. It is my look. And it used to annoy people. I used to get a lot of things like social media or even here at the office, right? They'd be like, would you unbutton that top button?
Right,
No, it's what I like to do, and you're no fashion expert, so shut up. That's what I said to my bosses. Not
fair
you.
Enough.
Not you.
By the way, also not a fashion expert, but I'm trying to understand the logic. That's what I'm trying to say.
I unbutton my mouth here, right? So I can let and all of that, right?
Got it.
You're right.
But you're still you are loose in thought but tight in clothing.
No doubt about it.
That's
okay. The blood pressure. I'm keeping the blood pressure high in my my brain here.
Okay,
all right. It's like a concussion thing, they got to keep that up there. Also,
do you worry about weight? Because like when I gain weight, it's hard for me to then close.
Oh, you get a little bit extra on the gobbler there.
Exactly. I get a little bit of a gobbler, a little bit of it. So do you have to constantly worry about your weight?
Well, I'm pretty good with working out and doing stuff like that. So I'm a little bit neurotic with that stuff. So I don't ever fluctuate too much to the point where I go, oh, crap, this doesn't
are you
fit.
like what's your collar size?
I think it's 17.5.
I'm 17.5 as well.
Right. So,
okay.
Yeah.
But like, do you have an 18 for a fat day,
No,
for a bloated day?
I don't.
Like, what happens
No,
if, like,
I don't.
you know,
I actually,
like you wake up, you binge one night, you have a bunch of drinks, whatever, you got the munchies one night,
sure,
you chow down a pizza, and you wake up the next morning, you're like, I can't.
I've had some days where I'd go, damn, this one's tight. Or I did have some old shirts that maybe were like 17.25, and now I've gotten those all out. But
feels like you should have a couple of backups, a couple of 18s, a couple of 17.75, just in case you have one of those fat days.
I never would have expected you to be such a T-shirt guy. Really, that's where I was at. And then not only a T-shirt. So if we're going to talk about my clothes, you got to just hit on you.
Sure.
I mean, this is like, to me, NFL #1 wide receiver type T-shirt.
I appreciate that.
You know, husband, dad, fantasy football legend. That's who I am.
Yeah.
Eat it, and it's in your face.
Owning it, 100%, 3 for 3. When I'm doing casual stuff, I mean, you know, I'm a suit and tie guy, like on Football Line America.
Right,
I'll be a suit and tie guy. I'll probably, when we do our Sunday morning show coming up at the start of the season, I'll probably be in a blazer. You know, I dress for the platform.
This is awesome for this platform.
So right for this podcast, I thought. Honestly, I felt like I could probably show up in boxers with a beer and I'd be fine.
Right.
But out of deference to you and our viewers, I thought I'll throw in some jeans and a T-shirt.
Listen, you are welcome to wear your boxers on here anytime. I would love to evaluate your legs and ass on there, okay? Because that's what we do on this podcast.
Let me just say this. My wife is a very forgiving woman.
Okay. All right. But you got other qualities that we do love. And I honestly have had a lot of fun working with you so far. I enjoy just that banter right there. You're very honest and genuine and awesome that way. All right. Matthew and I have done a little fantasy work together on your show. I think I probably drove you a little crazy with a few of the things I said. We had fun, and I know you tweeted some of that stuff out. All right. So
your insane love for Joe Burrow. That's what it is. Like, you have Joe Burrow over Tom Brady, who, by the way, has never, like, I get it. Burrow had an amazing year last year.
Right.
But the idea that fantasy-wise, which is what I'm looking at in terms of numbers, that Tom Brady, who has, I believe, led the NFL in passing attempts since he's come to Tampa Bay. He's led the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns since he's been in Tampa Bay, who had a better fantasy season last year than Joe Burrow, when everything could have possibly gone right for Joe Burrow.
Hey, he's awesome. I get that.
Yeah.
I just don't. In fantasy, he might be better. I'm not. But to me, if you're asking me who I want as my quarterback, I'm going to take Joe Burrow now.
For this year, I'm saying I get it. Listen, Burrow's, whatever he is, 24, 25, whatever, and Brady's 45. So they're probably going to play about the same amount of seasons remaining in their careers. But no, so I get it on Burrow. Burrow's a franchise guy. You can build around him. He is fun to root for. He's great in the community.
Yeah.
Like, he is everything you look for in a franchise quarterback.
No question.
Asked an answer to that on Joe Burrow. I'm just saying, for this year, honestly, even though the Bengals got to the Super Bowl and the Buccaneers didn't, I still think I would rather, if I was an NFL general manager for this year, give me Brady over Burrow to try to get my team to the Super Bowl.
That's where I disagree with you there.
I think they got a little fluky on their way.
They might have. They got a little lucky on the way. I get that.
I think the Raiders got screwed. I think the Raiders got screwed in that playoff game.
They did. Hey, so what? It happens. It's not a fair sport. But
correct.
What I told you and what I said on the show the other day, I don't think there's any way they can. If Brady's the quarterback of the Bengals, they even get to that point where they're at last year. There's no way behind that offensive line, dealing with the pressure, the movement, all of that. So that's where I tell you that there's a difference. Brady might be able to make the most with the most when he's got all the right supporting cast. But I'm just telling you, if you took that Joe Burrow and put him on the 2019 Patriots that Brady was on, they would have been better than Brady with that Patriot team. That's what I'm telling you. That's my thought.
That one I don't know. But the one thing I will give you, the one thing I will give you is that, if there is an Achilles heel to Tom Brady, it is pressure and pressure up the middle.
No question.
And so, given the offensive line woes of the Bengals, I agree with you. Burrow is younger. He's more mobile than Brady at this stage of their careers. So I agree with you. Brady would have struggled on the Bengals more than Burrow did last year. But that's why probably Tom Brady said, you know what? I'm going to Tampa Bay.
Oh, no question.
Which is like where the Tampa Bay said, like, come to us. We got 4 of our 5 offensive linemen
Yeah, we
figured
got studs
out,
everywhere.
and we're gonna draft a guy in the first round for you, which they did with Wirfs.
Right.
And they took care of it.
I get it. I get you.
Yeah.
I understand that. Yeah. So it's the hard thing about my world is trying to, again, make it even, not always about the team and evaluate the quarterbacks for that. And listen, you have to do some of that with your fantasy stuff. So let's get into it. I got a lot of questions.
Yes, let's go for it.
And you feel free to interject anytime, anything that comes off the top of your head that you feel like the fan base out here needs to understand.
Sure.
First one, last year was my first year doing fantasy football.
Okay.
Did you? I doubt you knew that, but I've never done it.
I mean, I've heard some of your analysis, so I guessed that. But yeah,
I paid attention to it, but I've never really done it because what really happens.
you played the game. All seriousness, a lot of times NFL players or ex-NFL players will say to me that they will be apologetic. Well, I've never played before. I just played. I'm like, dude, you don't have to play fantasy football because you played actual football.
Well, yeah,
I mean, you grew up around it. You were a star in college. You played pro football at the highest level in this world for 8 years. Like you don't need to play fantasy football because you lived the fantasy.
Well,
dude.
it's fun nonetheless.
Right, yeah.
I'm bought in now, though.
Good.
I'm doing it
appreciate
again
that.
this year.
Good.
I am.
Awesome.
So I'm pumped about that. I really am. And I wasn't great last year. So the first question I have actually here is for me. It's at Addy M27. I hope I said that right. Chris, what did you learn about fantasy football in your first year doing that? Because I'm a newbie and they all know that. Wow. I learned that I can't have enough running backs. I think that's the first thing that I jumped at. Last year I had the first pick. I had Christian McCaffrey. And I can't remember the other running back I had off the top of my head. I might have had Dalvin Cook as well. And there was parts where they were injured during the year. And I just went, oh, man, I didn't realize I have to stay on top of my roster quite as much as I did.
By the way.
And it beat the crap out of me.
By the way, your league for letting you get McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook. I know it didn't work out, but how that's possible, because that should not have happened if you had the first pick. Dalvin Cook should
That's
have
my
made it back
Kentucky
to you.
family, and
I
took advantage of them there.
Good, smart.
Right. All right.
Okay.
So now let's get into.
By the way, I dropped that one F-bomb for you. I know I'm supposed to. I'm supposed
Welcome
to
to
curse.
NBC, baby.
Exactly.
Welcome.
15 years of Disney.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
Matthew Berry Unbuttoned. See, here we go.
There you go.
He'll be wearing boxers by the next time he comes on here.
100%.
All right. Jacob Shapiro. He wants to know, I have second pick overall.
So can I just address that, though?
Please
yes,
do.
Running back is the most fragile position in fantasy football, obviously, because they take the most contact, they get hurt the most. And so I don't know that you want to come out of your draft with loading up on running back, but it does affect your strategy. And so I'm a big believer, and there's a lot of controversy about this in the fantasy community, but I am personally on board with insurance running backs. If you had Dalvin Cook, I would have said you should have gotten Alexander Madison. Last year with McCaffrey, you should have had Chuba Hubbard. And Hubbard.
So you stay on the same team.
Just because you stay on the same team when there's a situation where if the starting running back goes down, there is a clear-cut backup, and we have high expectations that backup will produce at a decent level.
Right.
Madison's a great example.
Yes.
Tony Pollard in Dallas behind Ezekiel Elliott.
Gotcha.
If Zeke were to miss a game, we think Pollard would be very, very good. And so there's situations like that where there's a clear-cut backup. And that person, I mean, think about how good Deontay Foreman was filling in for Derrick Henry. Now, he got signed midseason, and it wasn't clear on draft day.
But I got your point.
But
your
that's the
point's
point.
Real. Yes.
So, and that's the other thing is that when you're starting on draft day, and we can move on here, but very quickly, you have to understand that players will come into the league. By into the league, I mean into the free agent pool, the waiver wire pool, into your fantasy league. And so what you're doing on draft day is you're basically creating a blueprint. You don't have to leave your draft with a team that you're going to start every single week, because that's not going to happen.
Right.
There's going to be injuries, and so you're going to make trades. You're going to pick up guys off the waiver wire. Guys that are backups on draft day will have value. Weeks 9 through 12 last year.
Yeah.
Devontae Freeman, who was sitting on his couch a year ago.
Right.
Devontae Freeman was a top 16 fantasy running back for the Ravens because J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards they both went down.
They're a running football team.
They're a running football team, great offensive line. And so Devontae Freeman showed he had a little bit of juice left. And so for a month there, he was a top 16 fantasy running back. He was a usable piece in fantasy. And that's what's going to happen over the course of a season is all you're doing on draft day is creating a foundation that you're going to mix and match over the course of a season fantasy football is a weekly game. It's not a season-long game.
Yeah.
It's a weekly game played over the course of a season.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of the point. And running back is one of the biggest positions where you can make a difference on a weekly basis.
I got to get better in that department. It wore me out a little bit and trying to juggle around the roster.
Yeah.
So that's something I've definitely learned. All right, so now let's go to Jacob Shapiro. He's got a question. I have the 2nd overall pick, and I'm going with Austin Eckler over Christian McCaffrey for the fact that the running backs don't all of a sudden get healthy. Is that smart?
Yeah, I don't have an issue with it. I love Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler was my fantasy ride or die last year. He was going late in the 2nd round, obviously finished as the 2nd best running back in fantasy, running back 3 on a points per game basis.
Is that right? Is that how high he finished last year? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, guy had 20 touchdowns.
Yeah,
he had
right.
20 touchdowns. And in PPR leagues, I mean, he had 70. You know, he caught 70 balls.
The receiving is big with him.
Yeah, I
yes.
mean, like Joe Lombardi came into Los Angeles and said, "You're my new Alvin Kamara."
Yeah.
Like the anti-Eckler argument going into last year was he's not going to get the ball at the goal line. We know he's a great pass catcher,
right.
but they're going to use Larry. I swear to God, these were arguments that I was arguing about last year. People were like, "What about Larry Roundtree? What about Larry Roundtree? Who gives a shit about Larry Roundtree? Nothing personal, Larry, but like, I mean,
yeah.
Austin Eckler is a special player
yes,
and highly efficient, has been throughout his career. And so, and people are like, "Oh, what about Josh Kelly?" And I'm like, "What about Josh Kelly?" Anyway, the fact of the matter is, Eckler, Mr. Shapiro, Eckler is a special player. If you are nervous about the injuries with McCaffrey, I get it.
Yeah.
Certainly, the last 2 years have made a concern. If you watch the Roto World Draft Guide show,
right?
We talked with our expert, right? And former head trainer of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he said, Mike Ryan said, "Hey, I'm nervous about McCaffrey, with these ankle injuries, they build up over the years, and I am a little nervous about him." So Mike Ryan's got 30 years in the NFL,
no
20
doubt.
years as a head
I grew up
trainer.
with him. He's the Giants, right?
Yeah, of course,
yeah.
right? So, I mean, Mike knows his stuff. So I get that. I personally think the upside of McCaffrey is worth taking him at 2.
You do? Okay,
I
that's
do.
Good to know.
I'm comfortable with it. But are you an idiot for taking Eckler? No, because here's what I will tell you, just in general draft philosophy. As soon as the draft is over, as soon as one snap is played, rankings are out the window, right? I mean, think about where Cordero Patterson was ranked last year and where he finished in fantasy. Even Austin Eckler, again, he was going late in the 2nd round. He finished as a top 3 overall player. As soon as the first snap is played, rankings are out the window. So get your guys.
Right.
You want Eckler over McCaffrey? No one's looking at you weird. I don't think that's stupid at all. Eckler's a special player. He's going to have a monster year. I'm at 3.
Yeah.
So get your guys. And the other thing is you got the 2nd overall pick. Like, Eckler ain't coming back to you.
Yeah.
If you want Austin Eckler this year, that's your one chance at getting him.
Yeah.
Go get your guys. I spend more time on rankings than I think any other person on the planet.
Yeah.
I've spent my life dedicated to fantasy football, and even I use rankings as a loose guideline, my own rankings as a loose guideline.
Right.
So
okay, that's good. That's good. That's
there
good
you
to
go.
know right there. I like the logic. It's certainly, you're helping me out. I know that. All right, so now more running back questions.
Yeah.
At BC Browns, where would you draft Alvin Kamara? Assuming no suspension, which we haven't heard anything of that as of late.
We haven't, and again, Roto World Draft Guide show. Check it out on the NFL and NBC YouTube page. I'm a company man. Mike Florio came on, our buddy Mike Florio, and said, he's talked to the NFL, and even though the NFL has the ability to suspend Kamara now, it appears that because it's been this long. I mean, this happened, back in February at the Pro Bowl.
Yeah.
It's been this long. And you think about how long the NFL has taken to, with the Watson situation, the expectation here seems like that the NFL is willing to take a step back and let the legal process play out. See what happens in the legal case. Let this case be tried. Let Kamara and his team present their case. Let the prosecution present theirs. See how that nets out. And then once there is a ruling in the legal case and they have more information, then they can decide whether or not to make a suspension and what that suspension will be.
Yeah.
So if they're going to wait until the legal case is done, it doesn't appear now that will happen during the season.
No.
It keeps getting kicked down the road.
Right.
And it's
next year is where you're
it's
thinking
September
it's gonna
29th.
be. Right.
So my expectation is that, and injuries are always a concern. Obviously, he missed a few games last year with, but ultimately my belief is that Alvin Kamara will be eligible to play in all 17 games this year. And if he's eligible to play in all 17 games this year, then he's a first rounder. This is a guy who was a top 5 running back in fantasy points per game last year, right? I just got some crazy stats here. 22 touches a game last year, 3rd most in the NFL.
Right.
Like, we always want talent and opportunity, right?
Yep.
Average over 18 carries a game. He was 6th in red zone carries per game.
Yep.
8 different games with over 100 or more scrimmage yards. That's tied for 3rd most among running backs. Like, we know. I don't need to sit. I give you a lot of stats, but you already know this, and you sit here and you see I am at 6.
Yeah.
You see it on your screen right there in front of you. I'm at 6 overall because I think he's playing every game.
Yeah.
And I think he's a special player.
Yeah, that's great. This is what I love about you. You got real legit football knowledge. I mean, you're not just some fantasy number guy. I love how you connect dots. I've talked to you enough now to know, whoa, Matthew Berry knows kind of what he's talking about. And he follows the league closely. And he's in an offense that likes to throw to the running back too.
Yes,
and that's
it does.
where, 2 things I've learned from you so far that I know you're all on. Follow the money.
Yep.
Yeah, they're paying a guy. They're going to try to use him.
Correct.
And you're correct about that. You're very good with understanding, like you talked about with Austin Eckler. Joe Lombardi's there, came from the Saints. So you're good at connecting dots that way.
Yeah.
And there's great knowledge to that. And that kind of plays into the next question.
And to that point, by the way, think about the Saints offense this year. Right, for years, it was Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. And so maybe does he get a few less touches because they've added Olave, they've added Jarvis Landry. But then think if you're a defensive coordinator, okay, what am I going to do?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You've got what appears to be healthy pre-injury Michael Thomas, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL.
Right.
We love Olave.
Right.
By the way, shout out to the Big Ten now on NBC, right?
Look at you, just kissing the company's ass.
100%, man. Listen, I'm the new guy, right? I'm absolutely kissing ass. And then also Jarvis Landry, who's as good a route runner as there is in the NFL.
No doubt.
And so, like, if all of a sudden you've got a lot to deal with if you're a defense coordinator. And so there's so many things that you can do with Kamara in terms of spreading him out wide, putting him in the slot, getting him in the backfield. They have Ingram as well. You can see two back sets. Like, I also think one last thing here, and Chris, I think this is something you can speak to. This doesn't happen a lot in fantasy analysis, and I think it should.
Yeah.
Too often what happens in fantasy football analysis is that people, they just look at NFL players as statistical pieces of meat.
Yes.
Right? They don't understand these are people. They are humans.
I think that's why a lot of the players don't want to do it when they get done because they're like, I've been treated like meat by people just on fantasy world.
Right. And you're on Twitter and you're me because I didn't get you enough fantasy points even though we won. And that's my point. Right.
And I can't call the plays and everything else. Right.
I did an episode of Peyton's Places, and Peyton told me, like, I used to hate fantasy football because people would come up to me and say, hey man, you had a bad game. He's like, what are you talking about? We beat the Patriots, 13-10. He goes, yeah, but you didn't get me any fantasy points. It's like, what am I doing? It's like, we beat the Patriots or whatever it was. And he'd be like, oh, hey, great game. He's like, what are you talking about? We lost 45-40. He goes, yeah, but you threw 4 touchdowns. And he's just like, I couldn't wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
And so I understand that. But my point is that players are humans and they have emotions, and football teams are like any other office in America in that there are politics, there are relationships, there are good relationships and bad relationships.
Right, 100%.
And so I believe, again, not that Alvin Kamara hasn't tried before, but Alvin Kamara is not a stupid human being. He understands that there are a lot of questions about his character given the allegations against him.
Right.
And that there's going to be a lot of eyes on him this year. And if ever there was a year that Alvin Kamara needs to ball out,
a little motivation,
this is the year.
Yeah.
You know
so
what
you're playing the personal psychological angle as well.
Personal psychological chip on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that Alvin Kamara, who has gotten nothing but usually positive press in his career up until that incident in Las Vegas, now all of a sudden I think Alvin Kamara wants to.
Yeah,
I think
show everybody.
Show everyone.
Shut everybody up.
Shut everyone up.
All
I
right.
believe there is a case.
One more here, because I think I know where you're going to go because you're kind of referring to this. Our longtime listener, Corey Joskowitz, O-line when drafting QBs or running backs. How do you weigh that?
Look, I think it's a factor, but there's so many things that factor right into it. I think about somebody like, look, the Steelers obviously had a absolutely brutal offensive line last year, right?
Yeah.
And yet Najee Harris had a great, had an absolutely great season last year. He was a top 5 fantasy running back. He was the 3rd best running back in fantasy, and so
a lot of carries, not a lot of average yards per carry, but had the catches out of the backfield and all of that as well.
So yes, so offensive line matters, but it matters more on players that aren't getting a ton of touches, right? So if it's looking at, like with Najee Harris, not the most efficient. To your point, the numbers aren't going to be there. The efficiency numbers aren't going to be there. But his volume was so insane that it didn't matter, right? But by the way, it has mattered the last couple of years with Saquon Barkley.
Yes.
Right. I mean,
well, yeah, it was so bad that he couldn't even overcome it.
He couldn't overcome it.
Nobody could.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other piece of that is, so it's all sorts of things, right? So it's one piece of the puzzle. You look at the offensive line, you look at what the usage is going to be, you look at the coordinator, you look at the quarterback.
Yeah.
Right. And so is it? I mean, listen, Saquon was done in not just by his offensive line, but inconsistent play from Daniel Jones.
Yes.
The entire offense was a mess.
Yes, exactly.
The front office was a mess.
Exactly
right.
There was trickled down effect.
Trickled down effect.
Yeah.
Like Saquon just never had a chance.
Right.
And then also, injuries played a part there as well. And so, a good a strong arm quarterback and a big passing game can open that up again. Like we're talking about with New Orleans, having the ability to go downfield. Look, it'll be really interesting. Obviously, here's a good example. The Miami Dolphins had a bad offensive line, and this year they've made a lot of improvements to that offense.
Yes.
But if they were going into the season with just Myles Gaskin, and obviously they added Chase Edmonds, they added Raheem Mostert, they added Sony Michel.
Yeah.
But if they were going with just Myles Gaskin, I would be like, I'm actually more bullish on Myles Gaskin this year than last year, even though last year was a disappointment because to Jalen Waddle, they added Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
They added Cedric Wilson.
Right.
They've got another year of
field up.
Open the field up,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden now those running lanes become easier.
Right.
Like so many running backs face these 8-man boxes because they're not scared of the quarterback.
Yeah,
they're like,
sure.
we ain't scared of you.
Right.
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 I think that's one of the things that happened somewhat on Jonathan Taylor. And so I think they weren't as scared about Wentz. I think they'll be more scared about Matt Ryan this year. Anyway, so to answer your question, offensive line is important, but
it's not an end-all, be-all. It's not an end-all, be-all.
There have been bad fantasy running backs behind very good offensive lines,
Right.
and there have been good fantasy running backs behind bad offensive lines. Think about the Patriots, really good offensive line, but inconsistent fantasy running backs because they rotate those
game
guys
by game,
so much.
like matchup stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
I get you there. All right, so another one with the running. A lot of running back questions, honestly, that people want to know about. I know. We got at Moritz Pfeiffer. What do you think about Antonio Gibson of the Washington Commanders? Seemed like he was poised for a breakout year in fantasy. I do like him as a player. He's talented, but another fumble might lose a significant amount of snaps to the rook Brian Robinson, who looked very good in preseason game 1, and I would think he'd lose some time.
Well, and they're going to he's going to lose passing down work to J.D. McKissick.
Yeah,
right. They matched the offer from Buffalo. I know from talking with sources around the Washington Commanders team, McKissick was an important re-signing for them.
Yes.
And so and by the way, and there's reports out of practice that he's been taking special team snaps.
Not good signs.
It's awful signs. But what I can't figure out is, and I'm punting on this, so I apologize on not giving you a strong answer here. But I'm being honest here.
You don't always have to go crazy. Yeah.
I don't know, because logic tells me that that Gibson is way too talented, and he was drafted by this regime. It's not like it's a new coaching regime. You're like, you ain't my guy.
Yeah.
Brian Robinson's my guy. Like, they specifically drafted Gibson because of his versatility, because they saw a little bit of McCaffrey in him, and the way that Scott Turner likes to run his offense in terms of, having a pass-catching running back, having a running back that can run a route.
Played some receiver in college in Memphis.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. He spent time in both rooms.
Yeah.
He was in the wide receiver room and the running back room in Washington his rookie year. And he was good last year.
Yes.
Played hurt.
Right.
And so when they drafted Brian Robinson, to me, I thought, well, that's just a depth signing.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, again, like, Robinson's a nice player, and they can use him for some depth in case anything happens. They had Jarrett Patterson. He's a little undersized. They've got McKissick as well. But the first preseason game wasn't great for Antonio Gibson's fantasy value. Neither is these reports coming out of practice. I'm still banking on the fact that the guy's really talented.
Yeah.
That they're going to want to use multiple running backs, and it's the first preseason game.
Yes, that's right.
The only thing I can think of, Chris, and I don't know if you ever spent any time, but Coach Rivera is he's a military guy. He's a no-nonsense guy.
No doubt.
Players love playing with him because there's no BS with him.
He's honest as hell.
So I wonder if this is a little bit of tough love on Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, right.
They're trying to send a message. It may not be. Here's what I would say to you. I'm not willing to suddenly no longer draft Antonio Gibson.
Yeah.
But
he scares you is what we're in. Scary.
There is more risk involved with him now than there was a week ago.
Yeah.
And if you watch the Roto World Draft Guide show, we had Denny Carter on, and we talked sort of about that running back dead zone,
right,
and Gibson's in there.
Yeah.
Where you get to that zone and you're sort of like, I don't love any of these guys. They all have sort of warts or flaws or concerns. The Miles Sanders of the world, the Damian Harris's of the world, because he doesn't get patches. So guys in sort of Breece Hall, they're sort of in that range.
Gotcha.
And Gibson's now in that range.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That he would scare me. That he would. Just not as I like the player. I think everything you said was kind of spot on. The injury, it's the second year is a little bit of a foot. And then I do think this Robinson kid's the real deal between the tackles runner, to where I think I could even do it. And you brought up the J.D. McKissick thing. I think that's real. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think that's buyer beware is what Matthew Berry is telling you here.
All right, and the other thing that's real, by the way, is Washington loves Alabama players.
Oh,
I mean, right? I mean,
the
like
2D tackles.
Right?
Yeah,
exactly.
I know.
They have
do.
drafted a number of Crimson Tide members, and so
signed Landon Collins at safety a few years ago. There's something to that. You're right.
They absolutely they have tremendous respect for Coach Saban and the program he has.
I think it goes
there.
to what you're talking about. Rivera doesn't like bullshit. He doesn't want bullshit players, and those guys know. Okay, it's time to play ball.
If you come out of Saban's program, you are a no bullshit player.
Exactly right. Exactly. All right, Josh Jacobs. All right, at Wilson 27 is getting Josh Jacobs in the 7th round a steal. Now this is Josh McDaniels. You just talked about the Patriots. They got the running back from Georgia in the draft. Of course, they have Drake as well. So how do you think that plays out?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about Zamir White.
Yeah, Zamir White, yes.
And Amir Abdullah. When we were at the game at Football Night in America, we all kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Amir Abdullah is going to be...
He can be the James White kind of guy.
100%.
Exactly.
He's going to be the James White and Josh McDaniels. So I would say no. 7th round is fine for Josh Jacobs. I don't have a problem with... do I think you got a massive steal? I don't. But do I have a problem with you drafting Jacobs in the 7th? I don't.
Yeah.
Here's my concern on Josh Jacobs.
Right.
Josh Jacobs, to date in his fantasy career... has been a volume and touchdown-based commodity, meaning that he's never been a guy that's gotten high yards per carry.
Right.
He has needed a ton of volume to get there. In games in which I put this out of my 100 Facts column, which is up on NBCSportsEdge.com, rotoworld.com, and that in games in which, for his career, in games in which Josh Jacobs has gotten less than 20 touches, he averages less than 13 fantasy points per game.
Yeah.
Right. He's basically he's basically J.D. McKissick. And J.D. McKissick's a nice guy, nice player, but he's like flex play in PPR. He's not somebody you don't want him to be your starting running back in fantasy.
Between.
Correct. And so, last year he actually got involved in the passing game, Jacobs did. But now with Amir Abdullah there, it doesn't look like he's going to get nearly the target share he got last year. I know they like Zamir White. And think about what Josh McDaniels did at the Patriots.
Yeah.
Multiple running backs, constantly multiple running backs.
Right.
Josh Jacobs had at least 260 touches every year of his NFL career. The last time a running back under Josh McDaniels got over 260 touches, I want to say it was LeGarrette Blount.
Right.
In 2012 or something like
that.
I mean, Josh McDaniels likes to use multiple running backs. So I think you will see Jacobs and Zamir White and Amir Abdullah, and you'll see a lot of guys. And so... If he's not getting the volume, he becomes really touchdown dependent, and that is a little fluky. You just never know who they're going to use at the goal line.
Yeah.
Especially now that, by the way, they just signed one of, if not the best, red zone wide receiver in the NFL.
Right. And they follow the money. Right. They paid him a lot, so they want to make it look good. I hear you there. He would definitely, so you're basically saying it's not a steal in the 7th round.
I don't hate him in the 7th round, but
he might be there in the 9th round.
I'm going to be in 15 fantasy leagues this year, and I'm not going to have Josh Jacobs on any of them.
Yeah, I got you. The only thing I'll say that just comes to my mind, and I think your logic is actually spot on, so I'm not even arguing. The only thing, just as football guy here, is I go, I don't think he'll be there after this year.
Right.
And I do wonder sometimes if they'll kind of just wear his ass out a little bit.
Just run him into the ground.
Run him into the ground. Let's save our rookie. Let's save the other guys a little bit for the future. It's the only thing. But I think your logic is spot on, and I would expect it to be more your way than what I'm saying. But I do wonder that brutal aspect of the business sometimes.
What I would say is I would agree with that logic. That we're just going to – if – this wasn't a team that had postseason aspirations. This was a playoff team last year.
Right.
They spent big money on Davante Adams. It's a brutal division, but the Raiders think they've got a real shot.
Yeah.
I mean, Josh, think about how many times Josh McDaniels has been rumored for a head coaching job, and he's like, no. He didn't go to the Colts, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's just like, no, I'm staying here. I'm staying with Bill. I'm staying with Bill. But then here comes the Raiders, a playoff team with a legitimate quarterback, has a bunch of nice pieces there, and Josh is like, okay, I'm going to go into a situation that I think is good, where I think I can win. And so they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, Josh Jacobs, which tells me they don't think he's very good, or they don't think he's worth paying, on some level. And so I think they'll use him, but I think in that first game of the season, when Derek Carr didn't play a snap, when Davante Adams didn't play a snap, when Darren Waller didn't play a snap, the guys they care about didn't play a snap. Josh Jacobs played the first 2 series.
I know. They're getting them ready and getting them ready for that New England way. So we'll see where that goes. All right, just staying on there. Just in the last one at Craig Moshkow.
Okay.
Why should we be down on Davante Adams? Other than competition for targets, what will his role in this offense look like? Used to be that team changed. Well, it used to be that team killed receivers, but now they only improve. So you're not down on Davante Adams at all. You might not be your number 1 guy anymore, but you're not down on him.
I'm down on him in this sense. He used to be my number 1 wide receiver. Now he's number 4.
Oh gosh, right.
Still have him as a borderline first-round pick. Like here's Davante Adams' problem. He ain't Cooper Kupp.
Right.
I mean, just like he didn't get fed the way that. I mean, going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr, that's a downgrade.
Yes,
it is.
Right.
Right. It's a downgrade.
Right.
And when he was in Green Bay, he got a 32% target share. Okay, a 32% target share, that's second highest in the NFL. He has had a 30% or more target share each of the last 3 seasons.
Right.
And given a Darren Waller, given a Hunter Renfrow, given the running game and how McDaniels likes to mix it up, I just don't see him getting. Look, he's still going to get his.
Yeah, right.
But like
maybe not 135 catches or 130.
Is it a 22% target share, a 24% target share, not a 32% target share? And so again, you downgrade him slightly. It's going to be he'll see less defensive coverage because of Waller and Hunter Renfrow.
Right.
But still, make no mistake, defensive coordinators are going to be like, we can just do single coverage Davante Adams because we got to worry about Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller.
Right.
Like those guys are awesome. But they ain't Davante Adams.
Yeah.
Davante Adams is still going to demand the most defensive attention in the secondary of any team they play. And Derek Carr is a good quarterback. He's not Aaron Rodgers, but a good quarterback. So yes, I don't have him at 1, but I am at 4, and I think he's gonna have a monster year. You shouldn't be scared of Davante Adams.
Right.
If he's your number 1 wide receiver, you're in great shape.
Yep. All right. There you got it. There you have it. I like talking to you, man.
Good, man.
I like how you bring the energy.
I appreciate that.
All right. It's awesome.
Well, listen, NBC is high. So far they haven't fired me yet, so I'm sucking up. So you're stuck with me.
Good. No, yeah, you're gonna be here.
Right,
we're gonna bring you
Thanks.
in continually through the year, hopefully, and we'll have lots of these conversations. I mean, I know our listeners love it, and I really enjoy talking to you. Look at this guy, an Aggie,
Look at us.
a Longhorn. Okay, I used to whoop the crap out of his school. He loved it. But I don't have anything to brag about right now.
I used to motherfuck Chris Sims because I grew up in College Station, Giga Mags, and so you drove me crazy because you would kill us every year. Every year you killed us.
Good. At least I got one team I can talk crap to.
100%.
Matthew Berry, awesome stuff. Really awesome. Really. Yeah, there he is. Father, husband, fantasy football legend. That's it for the podcast today. Chris Sims Unbuttoned. We'll be back next week. All right. We're not sure here if I'm going to go 2 podcasts or 1 podcast next week. We got to do a little juggling here. I have to go to Buffalo and talk to my boy Blue on Wednesday. My boy Blue is Josh Allen. That's what I call him. That's my boy. That's my boy, Blue. So we're going to figure that out. But either way, Monday we'll be back with all preseason week 2 reactions. You know me. I'm going to watch it all, dissect it all. Keep sending in the questions. Appreciate everything, homies. Loved all the questions today. Matthew Berry, you the man.
Thanks,
and you know what we like to do?
What's that?
Clap it up.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.